afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of On Cue. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones, and hope everyone had a wonderful Sports Tuesday. You're enjoying your Wednesday, the 5th of November, 2025. A little earlier today than expected, as we'll be calling hoops throughout the evening on this Wednesday in early November. As always, get in on the conversation, though. You can connect with us on social media at Rich Q on Q on X and IG, and of course, TikTok, Rich Q on a mic. Got about an hour plus to play with on this, as we like to deem it, a Woosah Wednesday. And typically, we try to breathe over the next 60 plus minutes. And how long is it going to take before the listeners get under my skin and I crack? Now, if you listen to the show on Monday and Tuesday, it would have been relatively record breaking time. But want to remind everyone, we are powered by our wonderful friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off your first purchase. The weather is starting to change. Winter's right around the corner. BYP20. That'll get you some savings. Also, fresh roasted coffee in addition to Get Ready with Tea. Three Brooks of Bourbon. Jersey Shore Breaks, second season coming up in March 2026. And our wonderful friends over at Play It Again Sports, 2 locations. So as always, we like you guys to just keep us tuned in and locked in. A lot of engagement coming through over the last several weeks with the channel and the content. You guys have been fantastic. And I kind of want to piggyback off of, now that the dust, the smoke has settled and cleared with the NFL and the trading, with the NFL trade deadline. I asked a couple questions yesterday, and one of them obviously was, what are the Dallas Cowboys thinking? The other question was, how fast do you believe this rebuild is going to be for the New York Jets? And then thirdly, sticking with that theme, up 95, here we go. The New York Giants standing pat. Was it the right move to make by the Giants? And I've got some thoughts on that we're going to get into in a couple moments. This is something we did mention yesterday when we were going around the league and we were talking about some of the quarterbacking play. I told you guys, I thought that after that game on Monday night, the Arizona Cardinals have no choice but to stick with Brissett, and Gannon kind of walks it back. They bench Kyler Murray. They're going to stick with Jacoby Brissett. He's going to get the start against Seattle. I think that's a smart play. I really do. And I also posed this question too the other day. I mean, do we start to look at a quarterback like Kyler Murray and call him a bust? And listen, I know that it's harsh at times to say that with a quarterback. I think he's got some talent, but he hasn't lived up to the hype. He hasn't lived up to the expectations. And I think you guys know as much as I do. When you're a quarterback in the NFL and you get drafted top 5 overall, top 10, the expectation is you are going to be a franchise quarterback. Now, have we seen a substantial amount of misses than hits over the last several years when it comes to the quarterbacking play? Sure. The Justin Fields, the Trey Lances, the Zach Wilsons, on and on and on and on. And there's some question marks now with some of these other young quarterbacks in the NFL. But I like the fact that Brissett's going to get the nod. He's that veteran presence that they need. He gets the ball out of his hands quickly. And look, the reason I bring up Kyler Murray and the fact that he's benched, we talked a lot yesterday about all the assets that the New York Jets acquired, all the draft capital. We know the Jets are going to need a quarterback. We know that. There are certain teams that are going to be quarterback needy, and they just can't wait. They have to figure it out fast. And I think the Jets are in that boat where they've got enough capital now where if they want to, they can maybe look at a player like Kyler Murray. They can maybe look at a player like Joe Burrow, who's been off injured. Think about what transpired yesterday, okay? Think about this for a moment. You had teams giving up multiple first-round draft picks, and yet some of these same teams that gave that up for position players couldn't pull the trigger a couple years ago when it came to Lamar Jackson and a couple first-round draft picks. And the Jets was one of those teams. I told the Jets, when I said it on the air, steer clear. Like, absolutely steer clear of Aaron Rodgers. And I got absolutely lambasted at the time for saying it. It wasn't the route I would have went. And obviously you got the buyer's remorse. Well, now you've got an opportunity to redeem yourself because it just hasn't worked out. And listen, I don't want to hear this nonsense. Well, they had a franchise quarterback in the building. They jettisoned Sam Darnold because of the injuries, the mono, the seeing ghost. It just wasn't a fit for Sam Darnold in New York. And now he's turned out to be a really good quarterback. And he's given Seattle a lot of life. I think he's breathed a lot of life into that Minnesota franchise last year. And he banked the dollars. And he's showing you that he can be that franchise quarterback. But there are basically 5 to 6 to 7 teams that have a franchise quarterback. And I think it's a lot of middling going on, middle of the pack. I really do. I honestly believe that. I think it's just middle of the road, middle of the pack with some of these quarterbacks. And you got to figure it out fast. You have to figure it out fast. So we're going to kind of recap what transpired, NFL trade deadline. Also, is it possible Eagles GM Howie Roseman actually had a miss? We'll talk a little bit about that. Belichick and Tom Coughlin, they advance when you're talking about the 9 coaches that go to the next process of the Hall of Fame. So you got Belichick and TC, Tom Coughlin, among 9 coaches advancing in the Hall of Fame process. I believe they're both shoo-ins. Obviously, Belichick is. You might have to work a little bit if you're TC Tom Coughlin, but I believe he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. So that's kind of where we're at. As I mentioned, you're looking at what transpired yesterday on Tuesday with the New York Jets. I thought they made just fantastic moves. I really do. You sit there and it's at times we don't like to say who won what, right? We kind of steer clear of that. Like who won what? Did the Jets win the trade? Did the Jets win the trade? Did Dallas win? Did Indianapolis win? I think the New York Jets fleeced the Dallas Cowboys. And I think the New York Jets fleeced the Indianapolis Colts. And the Colts are pretty much saying, draft picks be damned. And I thought the Jets also now have set it up where they can rebuild fast. They can rebuild fairly fast. And listen, I know it's always that spur of the moment, the Monday morning quarterbacking, the rapid reaction, but they've got a lot of draft capital and they can really fiddle around with it. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say there's, a little caution with their rebuild. I also don't believe Aaron Glenn is the right head coach for the New York Jets. I would be hard pressed to believe if Aaron Glenn, if they struggle again next season, is it possible they look in another direction? Who knows? But I thought that the Jets, again, if you look at all these deals that were made, Gardner and Williams, and just basically the overhaul, I thought it was a good day if you are a Jets fan. And it gives you hope. You have a GM that's aggressive. And now the head coach has to turn around and work with some of this draft capital if they give him that chance going forward. So it's an A+ grade for the Jets. I have no idea what the hell the Dallas Cowboys are doing. I mean, this is, to me, if you think about it, Williams to the Cowboys for Smith and picks. I just, what are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, here's the other problem I have with the Dallas Cowboys. For a team like Dallas to be trading any major draft resources, right? Think about this. For a good player, don't get me wrong, he's a very good player, but he's also soon to be 28, 29 defensive tackle that has a heavy, salary heavy contract in a season where the Dallas Cowboys don't have a shot in hell to make the playoffs. That makes no sense. Now, again, this is not really about Williams himself. I'm not trying to be negative out here. He's a great player. He's a great player, but sometimes these great players, when they hit 27, 28, 29, there is a drop off at times. And if you're the Cowboys and if you had to be that highest bidder, I was not going to relinquish that. I was not giving that up. And I just don't like the move at all. And I think the value that Dallas is kind of gaining, or they believe they've gained any momentum, they're looking for 2026, 2027, when Williams is getting older. Well, guess what? You're not getting those years back. And if you look at these draft picks, the problem is with Williams now salary heavy as opposed to bonus heavy. So assuming that a contract's untouched, the Cowboys are going to have to pay him right around $22 million in cash next year, $25+ million in cash in 2027. So you are kind of defensively mortgaging the future, even though you knew you had to shore up that defense because it's just been putrid. It's been horrible. They gave up way too many points, way too many chunk plays, way too much yardage. Now, the Jets, great fortune. It worked out perfectly for them. And I also think here's the other thing for the Cowboys. If the Cowboys sit there and say, we got regret over Parsons right now, I'm telling you right now, and if you think this is kind of easing the pain, it's not. It's not. You had the Saints trade for wide receiver Shaheed to see Seattle. So they trade a good-looking wide receiver. Saints will get a 2026 fourth-round pick, 2026 fifth-round pick. I think Seattle made out. Another weapon for Darnold to stretch the field. I think the Saints made out because, again, stockpiling picks. Now, the Jets trading Sauce Gardner to the Colts for the wide receiver Mitchell and picks. Again, the Jets fleece the Colts. It still makes no sense to me. 4 months after inking a contract extension, a pretty lucrative deal for Sauce, the Jets decide we're going to sell him to Indianapolis. And good for the Jets. It was a smart play and a smart move. It's a home run because you're looking at 4 years, 120 million contract that he was on, the compensation you got back, 2 first-round picks, and Mitchell, a second-round pick a year ago. Are you kidding me? That's why I thought it was just ludicrous that teams were not willing to give up 2 first-round draft picks for Jackson, but that's a story for another day. Now, if you're the Colts, you're basically saying right now, we need it to solidify the secondary a little more, shore it up, and we're all in with Taylor and we're all in with Daniel Jones. And they know that the window might be this season because you have no idea when Daniel Jones is going to revert back to the Daniel Jones that I've been accustomed to seeing for years when he was with the Giants. And he kind of had that bad game, that drop off that kind of makes you, okay, hold on a second. Now, you still have the best rushing attack in the league. They have a great running back. You can argue a dark horse MVP candidate. But with all that being said, man, the Jets made out big time. And, I don't think Gardner is the best locker room guy. I really don't. And the Colts know we have a bridge quarterback. We have a bridge quarterback. And that's the kind of move that when it pans out and you hit that home run, it's fantastic. Anthony Richardson, inconsistent. The injuries finally benched. Here you go. Daniel Jones takes the reins over and he hasn't looked back. 7-2 after 9 games, playing like an MVP, resurrecting his career, has an opportunity to cash in one more time. So there's your low risk to high reward if you're the Colts when it comes to having a bridge quarterback. So I like that move right there for Jones. But again, I don't like the move of getting Gardner and giving up what they had to relinquish. The Raiders trade Jacoby Myers to Jacksonville. So the Raiders will get a 2026 fourth-round pick, 2026 sixth-round pick. I would say for the Jags. Nice move by the Raiders. And the Jags basically are saying, look, we're trying to go all in. We're trying to make a playoff push, and we need offensive weapons, and we're void at the wide receiver spot. We have too many injuries, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter. So I understand exactly where they're going in that vein. All right, 15 past 3 o'clock hour, cranking it up on a Wednesday edition of On Cue. We are brought to you by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. Check out the promo code. New episode of Back Your Plate dropping tomorrow, BYP20, and you'll save now on your first order, your first purchase. As always, don't forget to get social with me as well. Very, very, very easy to do on X and IG at Rich Q on Q, TikTok, Rich Q on a mic. You can like, comment, subscribe, and of course, check out the YouTube link as well. Quick timeout. We'll come back on the other side. We'll start to go through some of these quarterbacks in the NFL. I also want to look at week 10, little look ahead. And, we kind of always talk the power rankings, which teams are coming out of the NFC, the AFC. We're starting to see that separation. So we'll get into that as well. Keep it locked in to a Wednesday edition of On Cue. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. All right, welcome back, everyone. 18 past 3 o'clock hour, a Wednesday edition of On Cue. As I mentioned a little early today, a lot of hoops, so we wanted to get in at least a nice little power hour for you guys as well. I wanted to get into a little bit of this Aaron Glenn conversation. You know, it's amazing. Aaron Glenn, right? I had a very interesting conversation with a former Jet player today, and we're kind of the belief, I am too, that Aaron Glenn, this experiment might last max 2 seasons. So, like Aaron Glenn said, he wanted the Jets to be a team that would make the fans proud. So you trade away two franchise cornerstones, but again, I have no problem with it. I don't. Glenn went on during the presser to say, and this is per Rich Samini, I want this team I want this to be a team that the fans are proud of. But again, I never said that they were going to be proud of them right now. I mean, you want to talk about the political, right? It's like Michael Scott from The Office. It's just an idiotic, moronic thing to say. And, you know, I'll tell you this, I'm hoping on Friday I have the guest that I want to talk a little bit about this coaching carousel in the NFL and what has worked and what hasn't worked. But I just want to read the exchange regarding Glenn. We also mentioned a little bit about McDaniel. And this is when talking about discussing the quarterback. I understand why he doesn't disclose, but he needs to say it and stop with this because I don't want to. It's childlike. Both quarterbacks have different skill sets, and you don't want the defense being able to prepare. It's that simple. Mark and Rich should know that. Instead, they keep asking the questions knowing he's going to keep burying himself. It's a former Jet player that I was having a conversation with today regarding Aaron Glenn. And again, as I mentioned, I just don't see this having any sustainability. When you put these coaching staffs together and they're poorly constructed, you're not going to succeed. You're not. New phones. Who this? Early start on Wednesday. Q wasn't prepared to troll you. Hey, I don't know what to tell you. We got hoops later. We're trying to do a power hour for you, brother. So get in on the conversation. Let me get to some of these comments as well. Yeah, I just think it's a mistake. And they missed at the quarterback. They went the bridge route one more time. Obviously, it's just not working. And that's one of the reasons that they're going to need a big time franchise quarterback going forward. Hence, I gave you the names. Murray, Burrow, even though he's injury prone. Here's another name for you. How about CJ Stroud in Houston? Like a lot of people still believe that, he's not, he's 24. I think he's a good quarterback, but has he shown you just yet he can be a franchise quarterback? Can he be that franchise quarterback? He's kind of regressed, has he not? Off injured, banged around a little bit. D'Amico Ryans, the bloom is off the rose there. You go back to his rookie season, fantastic. 4,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, dropped back down to earth in 2024, put up decent numbers, but again, doubled up the picks. This year so far, 1,700 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. The other issue is takes a lot of sacks. That offensive line is not helping him out at all. But that's a name. I think Baker's going to get another deal. Baker's not going anywhere when it comes to Tampa Bay. Justin Herbert, I believe that Harbaugh believes he's the franchise quarterback with the Chargers. So it's so hard to get that franchise quarterback. But now that you've got assets, trade capital, you can be aggressive. And I believe the rebuild can start faster. I believe that. B chimes in Q. Do you think that Gannon benching Murray had anything to do with Marvin Harrison's comments? I think Jonathan Gannon knows at this moment that Brissett gives them the best chance to win games. And I know we've talked about this a lot in the NFL. When you're a head coach, you are trying to win football games. Did it help that Marvin Harrison Sr. basically said, I don't like the offense? I think that was a shot at the play calling. I think it was also an individual shot, maybe at Kyler Murray, not getting the ball to his son. And then what did they do the other night with Brissett? They force fed him the football, did they not? Look, that game they lost to the Packers 2 weeks ago, they were right there. And Jacoby Brissett played well. And it's not like Harrison went off on that game. Now he had 6 catches. I'm sorry, 2 catches, 6 targets. And McBride is the one that's showing you he's a big time player. He's a really nice tight end. I mean, he's one of the best tight ends in the NFL. So they geared that offense towards him. The seam routes open up the middle of the field when teams are playing a little soft coverage. They're trying to work off the ground game. But what you saw the other night, those comments come out, let's force feed them the football, and here you go. And I think Gannon's just trying to win football games, to be quite honest with you. And I think there's a little bit of buyer's remorse with Kyler Murray. And the other thing you also have to factor in, and I know, listen, Gannon was with the Philadelphia Eagles, right? He was with the Colts for 5 years, defensive backs coach. He was with the Eagles, there's their DC for 2 seasons. He's been with the Cardinals since 2023. He's got no ties to Kyler Murray. He doesn't. He's got no ties. So again, let's not think for 1 minute that, he's worried about feelings here. He's not. You got to go with the hot hand sometimes. That's just the way I look at it. It's one of the reasons that I mentioned, they might turn around and who knows the future of Murray? You just don't know. I think it was the right move. I think Brissett has shown he can play. He's a pro's pro. He's a veteran guy. And again, the other thing is, Murray and the Cardinals are kind of going back and forth with the doctors. They're talking about, the time frame. Again, you're talking about this injured foot, and I think it's an out. And that's one of the reasons that, here we go, let's stick with Jacoby. And the fact that he played very well on the road, national TV, and they snapped a 5-game losing streak with a win over Dallas. That's a big win. And they're opening up a little bit with the offense. And again, I think the distribution of the football, and that's kind of been some of the knocks, and I'm not comparing the two quarterbacks, but you hear the issue with A.J. Brown. And a scout came out and basically said, listen, the guy's a competitor. He just wants to compete. You want that dog in a player. That's all. It's all about competing. And the problem with the Eagles offense at times was the distribution of the football. Where are we spreading the football around? Who's going to get the touches, the targets, the reps? And then they typically will force feed, like they've done a couple times with A.J. Brown. But that offense still goes through Saquon Barkley. Case in point, you look at the Arizona Cardinals. Jacoby Brissett, he can sling it. Guys are, again, getting involved. Michael Wilson and Zay Jones have combined for more catches and yards in the last 3 games than they had in the first 5. And with Kyler Murray, Arizona was scoring 20.6 points per game. They're averaging 26%. So if you think about that, they're 3-5. If they were scoring because they've lost so many late games and just, a small margin of error and margin of victory for the opposition, they'd be a 5-3, 6-2 team at best. And again, the fact that you're sustaining drives, that's another thing, 3 and out. So the longer the offense is on the field, it's going to lead to points. It is a no-brainer. You stay on the field, you get more opportunities to play. More plays are being called. It's huge. It's not rocket science, especially on third down. 15 points against San Francisco. I mean, come on. You weren't playing the 85 Bears here, Kyler Murray. So I think right now what you're seeing is the potential of a Murray, maybe looking at a change of direction, a change of scenery. I think what you're looking at in Miami, Tua, perhaps a change of scenery as well. And listen, we can talk and break down these contracts and the cap hit all you want. But I also believe, that is an official benching. Now, if this team goes on a little bit of a run and they win 6, 7, 8 games, or they're right there week 15, 16, 17 for a playoff spot, and Brissett's putting up some numbers and they're moving the football and scoring points, maybe they have a tough loss late, but they win 8 or 9 games. I mean, what do you do next season? What do you do next season then? And that's the rub with some of these quarterbacks that got monster contracts. Kyler Murray signed a 5-year, $230 million contract extension in 2020. That runs through 2028. Is he a $46 million a year quarterback? I don't think so. He got $105 million fully guaranteed at the signing. Plus, he got another $160 guaranteed for injury. I mean, how about that? It's a total value of $230. I'm not sticking with Kyler Murray going forward. I'm just not. Kyler Murray, Tua, it's the same nonsense. They give you a flash, here you go. McDaniel's going to be out of a job. He's going to get fired. I don't even know if this guy's going to an offensive coordinator position. But Tua's in that same spot. Injury prone, deals with a lot of concussions, very sporadic, very inconsistent. When everything goes perfectly for a quarterback like Murray and Tua, they can put up points. They can move the football. When it breaks down and they can't see over the line, or they're being sacked, or they're hurt, or inconsistent play, or just bonehead mistakes or bad picks, you're in the same boat. You're in the same boat with these guys, and you got to figure out what you're going to do. And that could lead to opportunities for some other teams that maybe want that bridge quarterback, low risk, high reward. Low risk, high reward. And sometimes a change of scenery does these quarterbacks a boatload. A boatload. B chimes in. Q, do you believe that burner account is Joe Shane's? I saw something on Twitter about that. Interesting enough, I'm talking about CJ Stroud. He's going to be out again. He's in concussion protocol. So Davis Mills will get the start for the Texans per D'Amico Ryans. I saw that. I mean, I don't know. Is this like a Colangelo situation? Who knows? Look, I'll say this. If you look at everything, right? Like Jackson Dart, 6 starts. He's averaging right around 236 total yards. He's on pace for over 4,000. Like the kid's playing well. And you look at the throw rate, the big time throw rate, the third down conversion. You look at their drop rate, which is bad, all without Malik Neighbors. Wan'Dale Robinson sporadic, no Scatterboo. They really don't have a ground game. Slayton can't catch cold. Johnson's inconsistent, bad play calling. They got their quarterback. Now, do you want to get on the Giants for being quiet yesterday? You have every right. You have every right. But again, I will caution you and say this. If the Giants decide we're not going to, turn around and trade Hyatt, kid better have some reps. John chimes in. Q, I was just listening to Arizona radio late last night. Did you hear that? Gannon said even if Kyler Murray was healthy, he was going to make a decision to go to Brissett as the starting quarterback. There you go. There you go. Tells you everything you need to know. Because he gives them the best chance to win, and Gannon wants to keep his job. And as I mentioned, the head coach and the GM don't have any ties to Murray because they didn't draft him, period. There's no loyalty. There's none. If he's not my guy, if I didn't draft him, I don't have to worry about the feelings. Feelings be damned. That's the NFL. I'm telling you, Kyler Murray, he could be a Jet next season. He could. Kyler Murray could be under center for the Jets next season. Tyler chimes in. I'm fine with moving on from Kyler if that's what they want, but I don't want to hear this fan base complaining about being in QB purgatory for the next 3 to 4 years. That's a fair point. Stefan D chimes in. Q, that's extremely poor journalism. That's not what he said. That's what he said. I mean, he said it. And listen, I know right now that he is trying to save his job. And in order to do that, you have to figure out a way to win football games. That's it. You got to win. Nobody cares how these jobs are done. They don't, right? So if you want clarity, right? Gannon basically said he needs to get healthy. Meanwhile, the offense will run with Jacoby Brissett at the helm. And Gannon said this week he likes how it's been functioning. Translation, we're going to stick with this guy. We're sticking with this guy. And there's no turning back. And that's it. Some of these teams, they will be in quarterbacking hell and purgatory. Like, what's Dallas? Even though Dak Prescott is a serviceable quarterback, does anyone actually believe right now that Dak Prescott can actually lead the Dallas Cowboys deep into the playoffs and win a Super Bowl? No. But they gave him a boatload of money, and now they're stuck with him. But he's not the answer. They're going to have to make a decision on Dak eventually. Jared Goff and Stafford are getting older, but they've shown they can take their teams consistently to the playoff. Goff's got to get over the hump. Stafford's already won a Super Bowl. Josh Allen has to get over the hump. Lamar Jackson has to get over the hump. That's just a fact. Bo Nix and Herbert still relatively young. Patrick Mahomes has done it before. Jalen Hurts has done it. Baker Mayfield wants to do it. Sam Darnold wants to show he can do it. Brock Purdy's got to be healthy. But we've seen him lead teams to deep playoff runs. There's 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7 really good quarterbacks in the NFL. Really good quarterbacking play. The rest is just mid, man. It's just mid. Or you got reclamation projects all over the friggin' place. Look, Drake May is a great young quarterback. That is a major, major hit for the New England Patriots. I love this kid. This kid is a stud. I think this kid, you can make a case, is MVP of the NFL. And they were patient. They were patient. And you also have the right coaching staff. And what's Drake May doing? It is amazing. The NFL, what do we always say? Year number 1 to year number 2. They started that kid 13, 14 games last season, and he struggled. Now, my concern with Drake May in New England, my only knock is the offensive line. 13 games last year, Drake May was sacked 34 times. He's already been sacked 34 times in 9 games. But I love this kid. I think he's fantastic. He's a gorgeous deep ball thrower. He's 23. He commands the huddle. He makes plays. He's athletic. He's smart. He's not going to kill you with a back-breaking pick. He can move around a little bit with his legs. It's a great hit. Bo Nix, I think the verdict is still out on Bo Nix. Justin Herbert, you got to show me something, man. Dart, handful of games, small sample size, looks to be the it factor with the Giants. Herbert, to me, such a talented quarterback. He is such a talented quarterback, but you almost get this sense that, all right, you've been around the league now how many years? This is his 7th season, I believe. 6. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's been in the league 6 years. You got to take this team deep into the playoffs. You're in your prime, man. 27, 28. Talking about a top 5, top 6 draft pick. I loved Herbert coming out of college. I want the Giants to draft him. But there are some quarterbacks that I need to see take that next step. And I'm not talking about the progression. I'm talking about getting your team into playoffs or winning the division, making a deep run. There are a handful we've seen do it. Young quarterbacks. Jordan Love. I think if you ask the entire Packers fan base, they might be torn on Jordan Love. Sometimes you get great Jordan Love. Sometimes you get, what are you doing, Jordan Love? But Jordan Love is not a quarterback right now where you sit there and say, well, Jordan Love is still trying to figure it out. No. Granted, he was sitting behind a couple seasons Aaron Rodgers, but now this is his 3rd season as a full-time starter. And I think he's playing well this season. I do. But I also believe if you ask a Packers fan, they're still on the fence with Jordan Love. Quarterbacking is everything in the NFL. It's everything. And a team like the Jets, because now they have all this draft capital, they can be creative, man. They could be creative, and they can make a splash. They really can. Kevin C. chimes in a little early on Wednesday. Q, ha, 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 but I'm enjoying it. At work, doing nothing. Got you tuned in on the YouTube channel. Wanted to get your thoughts on the Giants standing pat, yay or nay. Well, don't get in trouble, Kevin, but we appreciate that. Again, I didn't really believe the Giants were going to be active. I thought there was a possibility of maybe moving, lower tier guys like a Hyatt, like a Banks, like a Neal. But the other thing is this, just because you want to move guys, some other teams might look at that and say, we don't believe there's any value. So why would we want to take on these players? and they are bust. I mean, they are bust. That's a period. Evan Neal was a horrible draft pick. It just hasn't worked out. And I feel as though ad nauseum, if you go through some of these over the years with the Giants, the Flowers, the Hernandez. I mean, you remember that? I mean, they have just had bust draft picks over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. They really have. Look, Kadarius Toney was a bust, a head case, a horrible draft pick, right? Horrible, horrible draft pick. I mean, probably one of the most explosive players in college football during that 2020 season with Florida, and Gettleman took a shot. He wanted to add explosiveness. Here we go. Never worked out. DeAndre Baker, 2019. Here's a guy that was a Jim Thorpe Award winner at Georgia, one of the best cornerback prospects in the 2019. They again believed, here we go, late first round, right? They traded the 37th, 132nd, 142nd picks to Seattle for the 30th pick, which they used. Just inconsistent. Inconsistent, and then he had all these issues outside. Eric Flowers, the most notorious, 2015 bust. Just bust. Just bust. Horrible player, horrible left tackle. Just, thinking again, we got the cornerstone, doesn't work out. Marvin Austin, remember that? 2011? Defensive tackle? Now, again, obviously, these are not all Gettlemans, but point being is they have had so many hits. If you go and you look at, Dave Gettleman, who a lot of people say, it was a horrible, horrible signing to have him as a GM. Okay. And you have to be fair and look at some of his draft picks. Now, again, to be fair, he did draft Daniel Jones. It didn't work out. He did draft Saquon Barkley. I think it worked out to some extent. Now look what Saquon's been able to do, and then obviously Saquon Barkley. And at the time, Barkley was only the draft pick who remained a Giant. But again, everyone was talking about, is he going to be an all-time Giant? Well, we don't have to worry about that anymore because he's with the Philadelphia Eagles. Daniel Jones, it did not work out. It was a controversial pick at number 6. And you saw a little bit of the flash. He got paid, and then he got injured. And now we know Daniel Jones bounced around. Now he's with the Colts. All right, here we go. Dexter Lawrence has been a good, at times, very good player. Okay? Good at times, very good player. But he's not playing well this season. He's not. The production is down, and the body language speaks of a guy that doesn't want to be here. Xavier McKinney, flourishing right now. Not with the Giants anymore. Gettleman pick. Julian Love wasn't a bad player, right? I think kind of an ignored piece in 2019, mostly, as a backup at starting safety, but made some plays. I always liked him. I thought he was a good player. Slayton, no. It looked like a nice steal for the first couple years. He can't catch anything. He just can't. He just can't catch anything. Period. Andrew Thomas right now, sure. Listen, only Daniel Jones, Andrew Thomas to me, you looked at him, and I think in the very beginning, when the Giants drafted him, and we got to be fair here, there were struggles. But now you see this kid, when he's out on the field, how he anchors and solidifies the line. He's an all-pro. He's an all-pro. And you got to have that on the line. You really do. He's great right tackle. He anchors the line. So point is, hits, a lot of misses. What say you on the line swinging 4 points on the Jets-Browns? Fool's play, in my opinion. Browns offense didn't acquire any new talent. I think it's definitely one of those look but don't touch. I agree with you. I think it's look but don't touch. I mean, all of a sudden, is Gabriel going to light up the Jets because there's no Sauce Gardner? Actually, that line, I'm looking right now. What did it open at? You said it's right now, it's sitting. Cleveland's still favored, I see, by 2.5, 3. I would not touch this game, to be quite honest. The only play I would potentially have in this game, pardon me, is the total. The under, 37.5. I think what you saw last weekend was an aberration, to be quite honest, because Cincinnati's defense is so bad. The Browns' defense is actually decent. It really is. So I don't believe you're going to have Fields duplicate the success he had against Cincinnati against the Browns. I don't see the Jets running the football. But I just don't like this game because I don't trust either team. I can't. There are certain games I'm already looking at that I don't trust. The Raiders are getting 9.5 against Denver. I don't trust Denver 9.5 at home. I don't. I really don't. You know, the line, the Giants and the Bears, that line went up to 4.5, 5. Buffalo's laying 9.5 against the Bills. Patriots in Tampa Bay. We want to take the Patriots legit. They go on the road and they beat Tampa Bay. Saints, Carolina, I'm not touching that game. Your Jags against the Texans, I'm not touching that game either. I'm not. And that line's crept down a little bit because now you know that CJ Stroud's not playing. Yeah, we're starting to get to the weeks of the NFL season where some of these games, even if you want to be enticed and you want to play them and you want to bet them, some of them it's like stay away, man. Now, if anything, you might want to start to look at some of these lines in the first half with some of these teams that are kind of dogs. And I'm not talking about underdogs, like bad football teams. Like, for instance, Giants go on the road against the Bears. Say the Bears are 3.5 in the first half. I would grab the Bears first half line. I'm not talking about the game as a whole in its entirety. Because what's going to happen is you're going to see some of these teams come out of the gate. They're not even going to be competitive. They're just not. Because it's all about these business decisions that we talk about. Hell, you saw it the other day with the Giants. You saw it the other day. BB Times in Q. What are the chances that the Giants fire Dable and keep Joe Shane? Is that something that you would like, or do you want one to go or both to go? I say both. I say both because if you fire the GM, a new GM comes, who's going to say he's going to be now? See, but Brian. Well, let me just say that I believe Brian Dable's done. I believe he's done. And these injuries are just absolutely ridiculous, by the way. Yeah, like 6 or 7 players. I mean, Illuminor might not play. Graham Gano, your freaking kicker, might not be available. John Michael Schmidt, your center, might not be available. I mean, you know, Adebo, the corner, is dealing with a knee injury. I mean, it's a walking mash unit. It's a walking mash unit, and we're not even week 10 yet in the NFL. I mean, what does that say? It's about to be a dumpster fire. It's about to turn into one of these. It's all on Jackson Dart. Enjoy the first half because at the end of the day, I'm telling you right now, they're not going to be competitive, and you already see it. And when teams are not competitive and their coaches are on the hot seat, I'll give you 3 teams right now. See how the Jets respond, see how the Giants respond, and see how the Dolphins respond because all those coaches have had just piss poor last several weeks. Glenn sounds like a petulant child. A petulant child, Aaron Glenn sounds. Because he doesn't want to close who the starters? Come on, stop. You know, Daboll looks like he's getting ready to cry at the podium, and McDaniel just has a deer in the headlights look. He has no idea what the hell he's doing. I mean, he's cooked in Miami. So if you're looking at, you know, again, some profits here and there, take a look at that Miami and Buffalo line. Buffalo's laying 9.5, but I bet you if you catch Buffalo in the first half under 5, grab it. They might blow the doors off the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins stink. They're not a competitive football team. They're just not. They lucked into that win against Atlanta because Atlanta's so inconsistent. They're a bad football team. And honestly, aside from the Atlanta win, the only team they beat this year were the Jets, and they barely beat them. Joe D in Summers Point chimes in. Q, you mentioned did Howie have a miss? Expand, please? Question mark. So did you watch the game the other night? The Monday night game? Josh Sweat is having a really nice season. I mean, he showed you that, you know, you get him or that defense gets you in 3rd and long. bad situational football, and he's getting a lot of snaps, he can wreak havoc with that defense. And he's played like it. He's got 7 sacks. He quietly has just put together a really nice season. I think he's a very underrated linebacker. And oh, by the way, his career high in sacks was several years ago with the Eagles at 7.5. So when I say, okay, was it a miss? Well, I think if you kind of look at it in hindsight, Joe, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Bourne, Campbell, I think they have 6 sacks this season. Josh Sweat alone has 7. He's been a difference maker. He's been a really nice player for Arizona. Arizona is not as bad as their record is. And yeah, once in a while, Howie can miss. Tom and Summers' point. Q, I know you mentioned this the other day talking about A.J. Brown not being traded. I know you never insinuated A.J. Brown was going to get traded, but if you were the Eagles, would you have at least contemplated it? No, not at all. I told you this 2 weeks ago. Nope, not at all. You're not. This is why this whole, oh man, the Eagles are eyeing up Myles Garrett. The Eagles are getting rid of a disgruntled AJ. Never, never. Yeah, they're going to make a call. 100%. They're going to make a call, but you're not giving up a player like AJ Brown, who is a difference maker to this offense. You're just not. You would be foolish. And it's okay that AJ Brown hasn't gotten the touches and the targets he wants, because there's going to come a time, not in November, but most likely in January, in a game where they're shutting down Barkley, where they're shutting down Goddard, where they're doubling up on Smith, or maybe Smith's banged up. Maybe it's just not his day. And who are you going to target? Who are you going to look for? Brown. You're going to look at Brown. You're not looking at Dotson. You're looking at Brown. So yeah, by A.J. Brown's standards, and I know he's been banged up and it's been a frustrating season for A.J. Brown, and he might crack 900 yards. It hasn't been an A.J. Brown type of season, but you need him come playoff time. He can take over a game. He's a physical wide receiver. He can go and get his, 9 catches on 11 targets for $136 and a touchdown, and he can move the sticks. He can get that 35-yarder late in the game if they decide to go for it on 4th and 3 for the jugular. That's the type of impact player A.J. Brown is. And this is where I'll agree with Howie Roseman. You're looking for sustainability. You want consistency. You want this to be long-term. You want to get back to the Super Bowl. This is not a one-hit wonder. You believe you have the horses in place to not only get back, but to defend. And now you start to think everything's running through the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC. Scott chimes in, I wish we did send Garrett to Eagles for 3 first-rounders. Yeah, you're a Browns fan. 100%. 100% you wish you did that. But there's no way, as great as Garrett is, I'm not doing that. A first-time GM, I'd slap you in the fanny, slap you in the wrist, slap you in the noggin if you're thinking about doing that. Absolutely not. And oh, by the way, Garrett can be disgruntled all he wants. Okay? Garrett is the one that signed that deal. Now, are you going to have teams that are going to pursue him in the offseason? I believe so. Speculation is not going to go away. It's not. It's just not. And like I said, if I'm a team and I see 215, I'm not picking it up. I'm not. And what the Eagles do, they're so sneaky good at this. They'll kind of keep tabs on Garrett. They'll keep, tabs. That offer wasn't realistic. And let's just say for one moment that offer was legit and Andrew Berry turned it down. He's out of a job. You have a player that's a great player. You're talking about a 2023 Defensive Player of the Year who at times is still unstoppable. It hasn't helped the Browns' record. Now you've got a player with everything that I just mentioned, all the tangibles, who's starting to get really vocal about the frustration of the lack of success for the team. Now, remind you out there too, this is months after he signed that massive contract extension. So You can't you can't have it both ways, right? If that makes sense. So if the Browns continue to struggle and they win 3, 4, 5 games, maybe they have no choice to move on from him before he becomes kind of a problem or a headache. Even though, remember too, Myles Garrett has a no trade clause in that new deal. He's one of the great players in Cleveland Browns history. Yeah, so it's going to be a setback, and could be a setback in terms of salary cap. But I'm telling you right now, in the offseason, if we have this conversation again and the Jets turn around and offer 3 first-round picks to Cleveland for Myles Garrett, I'm just throwing it out there because of the draft capital. And if the Browns don't acquiesce and trade Garrett and get that capital, then yeah, then you can sit there as a Browns fan and say, what the hell are they doing? I'm done with this franchise. So they're all going to take stock, right? Browns, Jets is lose-lose for both teams, both trying to get first pick, both probably already checked out with questionable coaching. Who starts planning for Cabo first? Listen, there are a couple teams that I can sit there and tell you that. Like, let's stop for a second. You're talking about these teams right now. Tennessee has 1 win. Giants have 2 wins. Saints have 1 win. So what's the that website that I love that I tell you guys about, Tankathon? Let me give you the updated draft order. Here we go. The Saints have the top overall pick right now. Tennessee, number 2. The Jets, number 3. Miami, number 4. The Giants could potentially get a top 5. And I'm fine with that right now if the Giants just basically lose out. I would love for the Giants to get the top draft pick again. See if they maybe go wide receiver, go defensive side of the ball. Cleveland 6. Raiders are 7. Cincinnati's 8. So Mike chimed in Ohio, said, Q, did you really say Joe Burrow to the Jets? Well, hold on a second. I mentioned this because here's a player, and I'm a huge Joe Burrow fan. Love Joe Burrow. I understand his contract, 5-year extension, about 280, signing in 2023. So yes, definitely, that contract is set to keep him in Cincy through 2029. But again, he's off injured. And we've seen this before. We've seen franchises who decide we're just going to cut ties. Guy's not healthy. It's a new regime coming in. Here we go. Maybe we draft that quarterback late. We don't have to worry about paying him as a top 5 talent, top 1, 2, 3 talent. We're not going to break the bank. And again, it's all about what the Jets have acquired, and it's all about draft capital and assets. That's why what they did yesterday was fantastic. A+ across the board. A+ across the board, period. NYG chimes in, Q, checking out the show, loving the Giants talk. Gable's going to lose his job for a variety of reasons. What do you believe is going to be the biggest reason he's fired? Can we pick? He's just not a good head coach. Sometimes the answer is right there. He's not a good head coach, and I don't think he really has any rhythm or rhyme. And I think sometimes too, if you're a head coach in the NFL, it's really hard to change your persona, your personality. Like Coughlin was able to do it late in his career. He figured, look, if I'm going to get fired, I'm going to be a little more loosey-goosey. And obviously, they go 0-2. Then they have the 4th down stop against Washington. The Bets play goal line, Portis on the sideline, and they get their first win. They go 6-2. They lose a couple, and then they finally get the playoffs. They have the game against New England, close out the regular season. The rest is history. They beat the Patriots. Coughlin was a little more loosey-goosey. Coughlin showed that he can take teams to the playoffs before because he built a winner in Jacksonville. Took them to the AFC Championship, if you remember. Dayball went to the playoffs. It was smoke and mirrors. And just like 2016, when the Giants made the playoffs against Green Bay with McAdoo, it set them back because they believe they can squeeze a little orange left out of Eli Manning and that offensive line. They couldn't. So last couple years, it was an aberration when they went back to the playoffs. And they beat Minnesota. Then they went on the road and they got absolutely just thumped by the Eagles. But based on that, what did they do? They turned around and they paid the quarterback, which was a big time mistake. Now, again, that head coach and that GM are not tied to that quarterback at the time. So there was no loyalty. Now, Jackson Dart is their guy. Is that enough to save your job by the presence of Jackson Dart and what he's done offensively for this team? And he's shown in a small sample size he can be that franchise quarterback. Now, I think he's got the it factor, and I like Jackson Dart a lot. I really do. And that's why I push for the kid to start sooner rather than later, if you remember. But I also want to see how it plays out the next month or two with this kid under center. But I believe he's got the makings of a franchise quarterback. But I don't believe this head coach knows how to cultivate that contact or that talent. I don't believe this head coach knows how to groom that talent. And I think it's more of an indictment when he leaves Josh Allen as an MVP. When he leaves Daniel Jones or Daniel Jones leaves, Daniel Jones is a comeback player of the year. And you can argue, an MVP. So ultimately, look, I think it's just time for a change, if that's being fair, right? And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with turning the organization over to another GM and another head coach and just cleaning house. I know you don't want to do it constantly, but sometimes you have to do that in the NFL. It wasn't real, I agree, but I do need picks first in my front office to make the right choice. Fingers crossed, but we have a new stadium we need to fill. Talent. I have no idea what the Browns are doing. Honestly, I feel for you, man. I know that fan base. I did radio in Ohio. I know that fan base it's a great fan base. And they deserve to have a winner, but they just can't get out of their own way. The Browns right now, their current draft picks, again, they have a boatload. They have a boatload of draft picks. Late, fifth, fourth, third, first round. They have draft picks. They got capital. Who's going to be the quarterback? Right? Like for the Jets, who's going to be the quarterback? For the Saints, who's going to be the quarterback? The Saints need a quarterback. The Jets need a quarterback. Cleveland needs a quarterback. Arizona might need a quarterback, or they might go the bridge again with Brissett. I don't know. Is it going to shock me if the Arizona Cardinals finish, with 5 or 6 wins and get a top 15 pick and go with a quarterback? It's not. And this is a couple years after they drafted Kyler Murray, number 1 overall, and gave him a monster deal. I mean, you guys talk to me like, why can't are we just not evaluating the quarterback position the right way? Are we giving up too soon? I mean, major misses with some of these quarterbacks. Can't figure it out. So who do you think is the right fit for Dart as coach coordinator? I wish I had that answer, man. I wish I had that answer. The Giants, listen, they need a defensive coordinator and they got to overhaul that defense. It's just, for the talent they have, they need to be better on defense. They need offensive weapons. They need to be healthy. But the GM didn't address certain needs, like a friggin' kicker. That's embarrassing when you knew the kicker was hurt. I mean, come on. It's like 2 years in a row now. The GM also, I don't believe, has any clue. I just don't. I don't. Are you building for the future or you're looking for short-term burst? And I'm telling you, man, I don't know. There's something off with this guy. There's something off with this guy. And I hate that Brian Daboll's fate isn't a package deal with Joe Shane. So you're going to retain Joe Shane. You're going to get rid of the head coach. So the GM's in charge to bring on another head coach. I don't want this guy anywhere near that conversation. I just don't, or that hiring practice. And the other thing is, for the Giant fans that are complaining, I can't believe Joe Shane didn't make any moves. Well, why would you want him to make moves if he wasn't going to be around in 3 months? Seriously, it's not a package deal. But Dayball to me is gone. He's gone. He's coaching out of desperation. He's coaching out of desperation. He's not coaching to win some of these games. The fact that this man has not fired the defensive coordinator, where you can cover your eyes, guys, and you can actually script up better defensive scheme than Shane Bowen, is just malpractice at its best. It's incomprehensible. You just can't. You can't allow it anymore. Yet he will not do it. He sat up there after giving up 33 points in the fourth quarter to Denver, after giving up 36 points to the Eagles, after giving up 34 points at home to a stadium overrun by the 49ers fans. He sits there and says the defensive coordinator is still Shane Bowen. That alone, get out. That alone, get out. I don't want that as a head coach. Guy's clueless. He's clueless. Sergeant Delaware chimes in. Q, you mentioned the hoodie and Coughlin. Who are the other 9 coaches? So you got Coughlin. You got Belichick. And let me give you the rest. You've got Buddy Parker, who won a pair of NFL titles with the Lions in the pre-Super Bowl era. You had Chuck Knox, Dan Reeves, Marty Ball, Marty Schottenheimer. There you go. Who else? Shanahan? Did I see Shanahan on here? Let me see. Belichick, Coughlin, Shanahan, Seifert are among the 14 coaches who have won multiple Super Bowls. 9 of those coaches are already in, with Andy Reid still active as the other. I think Coughlin's a Hall of Famer. Seifert, Seifert took over that team, what was it, 89, after Walsh retired in 88. Won 2 titles as defensive coordinator. Let me see. He won at least 10 games in all 8 seasons in charge of the 49ers. 98-30 record, 766. Then remember, too, he did coach Carolina, but I can't really hold him to that. I mean, that's a young franchise, 16-32. Shanahan, I would put, man, it's so hard when you win a Super Bowl. Chuck Knox was a really good head coach. Dan Reeves was a very good head coach. And Dan Reeves think about it, he took Denver to all those Super Bowls. He took the Giants, right, if you remember, to the playoffs. Took Atlanta to a Super Bowl when they knocked off that 15-1 Minnesota team, the Anderson Miss. 2-time coach of the year. What's his record? 190 and 165, postseason 11-9. He won over 200 games. He just never was able to get those Denver teams over the hump. Let me give you Chuck Knox, old school. If you guys are, you remember back in the day, those Seattle squads, the old Seattle squads, right? In the West with the Raiders back in the day. His coaching record, 186, 147, 7-11 postseason, won 193 games. And his best season was 83. 83, the first season that he was hired to coach Seattle, they went to the AFC Championship against the Raiders. That was the only time. I think the 88 team won the division, but they didn't make the AFC Championship game. And I believe he got fired. They went like 6-10, 7-9. Then he went to the Rams. Always liked Chuck Knox. Always thought he was a really good head coach. Marty Schottenheimer is an interesting conversation because Marty had some really great teams in his career. I mean, he coached some really good teams. Uh, he just never got over the hump, and unfortunately, everyone will put a knock on him because those and Howie can attest to this. Those Browns teams that were great Browns teams in the mid '80s, late '70s, early '80s, Sipe and then Kozar and Biner, they couldn't get over the hump because Denver was in the way. I mean, they had some really great teams, and then he went to KC, and they had some really great teams. Schottenheimer just never was able to get over the hump when it came to the playoffs. And that's always going to be the knock on Marty Schottenheimer. Now, I still look at him and say that he's a Hall of Fame head coach. I look at Schottenheimer and say, people can say he was conservative. We can joke with the Marty ball, but man, he was a football lifer. He won a lot of games. He was an innovator on the offensive side of the ball. They those teams that I mentioned, those AFC teams, man. I mean, this is a guy that started back in the day with the Portland Storm. He played in the NFL. Played in the NFL. I believe he was with the Bills, bounced around Pittsburgh and Baltimore. But this guy was a lifer, man. This guy was a lifer. I want to pull up his Marty Schottenheimer regular season 200 wins, 205 in his career. And let me just pull up the playoff record. Schottenheimer made the playoffs 13 times in 21 seasons. Postseason record of 5-13. Never advanced to the Super Bowl. His teams did really well in the regular season, but they really struggled, in the playoffs. And I think people will look at it and say the lack of a Super Bowl because you've got players that won 200 games in the NFL, head coaches now. 200 regular season wins. He's the only eligible NFL head coach with over 200 wins who has never been inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I think people will look at that Super Bowl appearances. But then I can argue Chuck Knox as well, right under 2,000. Regular season's unbelievable, right? The Marty ball, right? Run the friggin' football. Run the friggin' football. Play strong defense. It never panned out in the playoffs. And I'm telling you, man, some of his playoff losses, 2006. Go to 2006. You want to talk about a painful playoff loss when he was with the Chargers? They were 14-2. They were a juggernaut that year. They lost to Baltimore by 3. They lost to Kansas City by 3. They could have went undefeated. And then New England, they just spit the bit. They spit the bit against the Patriots. Oh, by the way, they were at home in that game. They were a 5-point favorite in that game, and they lost. Brutal. Brady, by the way, that game, 27 of 51, 290, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. Rivers did not play well in that game, and I don't believe that was the game that he was hurt. But point being is, a lot of regular season success. A lot. Does Mike Holmgren get in? Ooh, that's a good question. Man, I think you got to win at least 2 Super Bowls or really be an innovator. I think you got to win 2 Super Bowls. You got to win multiple Super Bowls and be an innovator. Homegrown because of that's that Andy Reid tree. Had a great run with the 49ers, right? And then obviously with Seattle. And then obviously with Green Bay. Well, prior to, I should say, Green Bay, then Seattle, pardon me. Made the playoffs a lot, man. 4-6 in the postseason. Won a Super Bowl in 96. Got back to the Super Bowl in 97. And then lost a wild card game in 98. Went to Seattle. And let's see, they won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 division championships. And they went to, How many championship games? Wild card game, lost. NFC wild card, lost Super Bowl to the Steelers. Was that 2005? Was that Willie Parker, right? Lost to the Bears, lost to the Packers, divisional round. Holmgren got the 3 Super Bowls, couple 4 NFC championship games. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think he's a Hall of Famer. I do. 161 wins, 592, postseason 13 and 11, overall 171. He is to some extent an innovator as well. I mean, think about this. When he took over Green Bay, right? That's when Atlanta trades Brett Favre, and he turns Favre into a Hall of Fame quarterback. And if you think of, that run that he had, 5 consecutive postseasons. So he joined Madden, 73-77, Andy Reid, Harbaugh, Belichick, McDermott, Pete Carroll. 46, 48, and 16, 75% winning percentage in that time he posted with the Packers. Yeah, I think players and coaches are different. Like Coughlin, to me, you beat New England, that's undefeated, and you took a Jacksonville franchise, right, an expansion franchise, to an AFC championship game. And remember, too, they beat Denver in the playoffs, if you remember, which was a crazy win. Big time. I think they were like 13.5-point underdogs many moons ago. And he won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. He gets in. I think Marty gets in. I think Holmgren, you bring up some, it's an interesting case. I think a lot of these guys are deserving. Belichick's a shoo-in. But Marty, Chuck Knox, Holmgren, Coughlin, the Harbaughs. What about Harbaugh? John Harbaugh won 1 Super Bowl. He won 1 Super Bowl. And a lot of people sit there and say, well, when is his shelf life going to start running out? I mean, it's a fair question to ask. He's been a head coach of Baltimore for how many years now? 18. And he's won 1 Super Bowl. And they had some great teams. They won 13 games, 12 games, 14 games, 12 games, 13 games. Now, you look at his coaching record, 175, 109. That's a hell of a coaching record. How many losing seasons Harbaugh have? Let me see. Winning season, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. He's only had 2 losing seasons and 2 500 seasons, but he also only won 1 Super Bowl. 18 years Harbaugh has been at the helm. And I bring that up because of this. Look at Tomlin. Okay? Look at Tomlin. Now, people will sit there and say, depends on who you talk to. Depends on who you talk to. Mike Tomlin is a shoo-in, a walk-in Hall of Famer. Okay. Mike Tomlin has been with the Steelers 19 years. He's won 188 games. Mike Tomlin won a Super Bowl his second season as a head coach with Pittsburgh. And obviously, the thing with Tomlin is never had a losing record. He'll eventually get in, but if he gets in, Harbaugh's getting in. I mean, the same, almost like the body of work, to be quite honest with you. But the shelf life, eventually, it's got to run out. Imagine being a Steelers fan. So you go from Noel to Cowher to Tomlin. That's crazy. It's crazy. Where some of these other franchises have gone through 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different head coaches, 5, 6, 7 in a 10-year period. Unbelievable. All right, going to start wrapping it up. Good stuff with the comments. Excellent stuff with the conversation. We are traveling tomorrow. Busy Friday show, though. Very busy Friday edition of On Cue. Football Friday. Lloyd Vance, John Bueller. We're working on a couple other guests as well. We're dropping a new edition of Back Your Play tomorrow, so you'll be able to get that on Amazon, Spotify, also Apple Podcast. I believe, I want to say Apple, Spotify, Amazon as well. And you can also check that out on Buzzsprout. That'll air Saturday, Sunday, 11 to 12 on WWON channel 48 in New York. And you guys have been unbelievable downloading the podcast, man. We're getting a lot of downloads over the last several weeks. I greatly appreciate it. Check out the YouTube channel at Rich Q on Q. Like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget, we are powered by our good friends over at Three Brooks Bourbon. Get ready with tea, fresh roasted coffee, and our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, not to mention the Jersey Shore Break set for season number 2, March of 2026. All right, we'll be back in the saddle on Friday. We'll cut that new edition of Back Your Play tomorrow. We'll have that up on the YouTube channel around 4 or 5 tomorrow, so we'll schedule that. That'll have all your betting lines for Week 10 in the NFL, best bets, player props, totals, money line. We got you covered over 60 minutes. We will talk to you guys on Friday. As always, appreciate you guys tuning into this edition of On Q, powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. And as always, I'm Rich Quinones. Be safe, be sound. We'll talk to you Friday. Hasta luego, buen día.